What's up, everybody? It's Brendan with Evoke Bike. So I want to show you what happened to me this season in regards to chronic training load and why you need to continually look at the big picture. I always try to say, look at the forest, don't just be staring at the trees, because I want to show you how if I looked at CTL, people are always like, oh, my CTL is falling, my fitness is falling. I'm going to add this to the blog, why just focusing on your CTL can really screw up your racing. It's not race readiness. It's really how much work you've been doing, your chronic training load. And especially if you go through a huge build, the numbers get kind of wonky, and I'll show you this. And when you think about the season, most people have a time when, you're getting ready for spring, you're getting pumped up for races, you follow your training calendar really well, and you build. And then once you start racing, it's not uncommon or wrong to have things somewhat plateau because you're really racing and recovering. This year was slightly different with COVID. I went ham on training and really was just trying to see how much my body could take in terms of training load. And this is the normal chart. I want to show you why in August there's this huge portion where my TSP goes positive. But if you're following me on Strava, you're probably like, wait a minute, I don't remember you ever resting that much. And this is why things can be very deceiving. So I want to show you, this is another chart that they have in WKO5. I think the color coding is really beneficial, and we'll actually go into WKO here. So I went through this massive build, and while I kind of agree, their numbers, I train a lot, so I'm not worried about going super negative, -50, -60. But this is a really interesting addition that they've added where they'll call this a plateau. Once I got up toward, this is 180 CTL, super high. I got up to 192, around 192, and was doing a ton of training. And so this is in June, and I'll show you guys what I was doing. This is before Tonga, but like if we look back, I did a lot of FTP stuff, a lot of intensive aerobic. My computer takes a while to load when I'm recording, so of course it's showing you nothing right now. Did a lot of high torque stuff, a ton of 15 to 25 minute efforts, more high torque, intensive aerobic, took a rest week, and then let's get to June though, because that's what I want to show you. If you're focusing only on chronic training load, once you ramp up, if you start racing, you're going to see it fall off, right? So at this point, this is when I went to the second Tonga. I actually had a mechanical, so it would have looked like this one. I went up to purple, which is, they call it transition, meaning like you're probably going into the weight room or something. Your blue is rested, green is freshness, like go race there. It would have looked like this, but I had a mechanical, and then I ended up leaving the race because of COVID a day early. And so by the time I got home the next day, I only did like an hour and a half ride. So I got super, super rested. But this is what the race would have looked like. And after you do that, your CTL always falls, right? Because you're riding less as you taper into the race. But people see their CTL falling, which it should, and they say, I'm losing fitness, I'm not as fit. And then what happens if you go and you have like another race, it's going to fall a little bit more. That's the whole point of overloading. Like you ramp it up and then you fall and taper into your race. But I'm going to have another blog and conversation with Patrick about this, because what people aren't understanding is that if you don't have a lot of miles in your legs and you go to quote unquote peak, and in order to peak, you have to overload. If you overload too much, you're just going to make yourself crack. You're not going to absorb that training. And when you go to taper, you're not going to be faster. You would have been better off just doing a normal build and riding with the fitness that you had. So you got to be careful about that. But what happens is here, I want to highlight this. This is not, that's not WKO. Let's look at what happens in August, okay? Because, so I go in, and in June, I raced at Tonga, won that road race, which is right here, okay? So we're at June 26th, 24th. And then I come back, and if you're looking at just CTL, ATL, and TSB, I race, and then I do a 20-hour week, 18 and a half on the bike. I do a 26-hour week of riding. I do a 22-hour week of riding. This is through July, and I come up to this race. That is a ton of riding. And look at this. Because I drove it so high, I'm not really seeing big negative numbers. So I could get to the end of July and be here, and if my TSB is 0 on 720, you saw what I just did, all of that? You're telling me that I don't have a ton of riding in my legs, like 20 plus hours over and over again? I mean, I can handle that because I've done this for 10 plus years. But if you're there, this is when a lot of people are like, oh, I haven't trained enough, and they just drive themselves into the ground. Don't do that. See the forest. The reason these numbers are skewed is because you just did a big build, and you don't have to be looking at a number that's 192. You might be going to 92, and then you go to a race and it's at 70, and then you go through a training block and you're still at 70, and you're like, I got to go more. It's not always that. Remember to look back as you're planning to go forward, okay? Because then things still stay funny. I go and do an 18 and a half hour week of riding with 2 lifting sessions, 22 hours with 2 lifting sessions. I'm setting PRs this time through August. And then what I want to show you is I would have taken a rest week here, but I had Gravel Worlds 150 and I didn't want my body to totally shut down. So I did a 4th week. So by August 29th, I did that ride, and I'm going to be at -8. There is no way I'm not tired at this point. So I rested, and my numbers got super, super positive. And it's about now, because I came down to a more normal, maintainable level. I just don't have the time to maintain 190 TSS. Things are too busy right now. So 727, 8, 9. By the end of October, my numbers will be more normal, and these will turn into, there'll be less large bumps. You can see they're slowly decreasing, right? It's because I went so damn negative here, or said differently, so freaking positive in CTL. The whole point of this is by the end of August, there's no way I wasn't exhausted and ready for rest. But if you look at just these numbers and you're not looking at what you did before, it's not going to fully capture all the volume and intensity. CTL is supposed to capture that, but you got to make sure you're looking at the whole picture. So don't be hard on yourself when you're like, why are my numbers all screwed up? You might have just went through a big build, or there might have been something else that happened. You got to look at the big picture. And then I'm going to go through this, and you can see they're slowly getting smaller. And I'm pretty consistent with my hours, so it's not an effect of just hours or volume. And I think this is a good chart because it's not as prominent here in the normal, very classic 3 lines. It doesn't stand out as much. I really like that they made this. It makes it easier to visualize. So I think the last point, I go through my rest week, and I really take full rest. I do super, super easy rides. First couple, I do an openers ride. I do a max endurance ride. I do openers, and then I do a power dip test where I test anaerobic capacities to keep my PD curve proper. And then I went back and started testing Lactigo and just went freaking ham and PR'd everything. So yeah, again, you can come into September being like, I'm not that fit. I'm too rested, and I PR'd everything. So this will even out again. And I mean, this CTL looks low. It's at 170. It's just more like the super low one is 153. So just keep everything in relation to what you've done so that you're properly planning how to go forward. Okay. Hope this video was helpful. If not, maybe the next one will be. Thanks for watching. See you later.